Well, welcome back to Whole Bible Study with Taddy Noy. I'm so glad you're here with me today. If you've been following along, we've just began the book of Exodus, a powerful story of God's faithfulness in the midst of deep oppression. In chapter 1, we saw the rise of a Pharaoh who turned against the Israelites and tried to suppress their growing numbers through forced labor and a decree to kill newborn Hebrew boys. Today, we'll continue that story with Exodus chapter 2, which picks up in the midst of this crisis. If you're just joining us, don't worry, I'll walk you through it. This chapter introduces one of the most pivotal figures in all of Scripture. Let's read together and see what God reveals. Exodus chapter 2. And I'm reading from the NIV version. I may switch versions here in the future, but for now, we're in the NIV version. Now, a man of the tribe of Levi married a Levite woman, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him and coated it with tar and pitch. Then she placed the child in it and put it along the reeds along the bank of the Nile. His sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. Then Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile to bathe, and her attendants were walking along the riverbank. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her female slave to get it. She opened it and saw the baby. He was crying, and she felt sorry for him. This is one of the Hebrew babies, she said. Then his sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" "Yes, go," she answered. So the girl went and got the baby's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this baby and nurse him for me, and I will pay you." So the woman took the baby and nursed him. Then the child grew older. She took him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, saying, "I drew him out of the water." One day, after Moses had grown up, he went out to where his own people were and watched them at their hard labor. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own people. Looking this way and that, seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. The next day he went out and saw two Hebrews fighting. He asked the one in the wrong, "Why are you hitting your fellow Hebrew?" And the man said, "Who made you ruler and judge over us? Are you thinking of killing me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and thought, "What I did must have become known." When Pharaoh heard of this, he tried to kill Moses. But Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in Midian, where he sat down by a well. Now a priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came to draw water and fill the troughs to water their father's flock. Some shepherds came along and drove them away, but Moses got up and came to their rescue and watered their flock. Then, when the girls returned to Reuel, their father, he asked them, "Why have you returned so early?" "Why have you returned so early today?" They answered, "An Egyptian rescued us from the shepherds. He even drew water for us and watered the flock." "And where is he?" Reuel asked his daughters. "Why did you leave him? Invite him to have something to eat." Moses agreed to stay with the man who gave his daughter Zipporah to Moses in marriage. Zipporah gave birth to a son, and Moses named him Gershom, saying, "I have become a foreigner in a foreign land." During that long period, the king of Egypt died. The Israelites groaned in their slavery, and cried out, and their cry for help because of their slavery went up to God. God heard their groaning, and he remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. So God looked on the Israelites and was concerned about them. Now for the deep dive on Exodus chapter 2. Exodus chapter 2 is a sweeping narrative that introduces the man who will become who will come to define deliverance in the Old Testament, Moses. But long before he becomes the liberator of Israel, Moses is a child caught between worlds, a Hebrew baby raised in an Egyptian palace, a man of privilege with an identity crisis, and a wanderer seeking purpose. Let's unpack this rich chapter layer by layer. First, a birth in the shadow of death. The chapter opens with the quiet defiance. A Levite couple gives birth to a son despite Pharaoh's genocidal decree. This child is born into a world where male Hebrew infants are meant to be executed. And yet, as in so many places in Scripture, life insists on breaking through. In verse 2 says that the mother saw that the child was fine or good, tov in Hebrew, the same word used in Genesis 1 when God declares creation to be good. This isn't just a maternal affection. It echoes the theological theme that life, especially vulnerable life, is inherently good and worth protecting. Her act of placing Moses in a waterproof basket isn't only pragmatic, it's deeply symbolic. The word for basket, teva, is used in only one other place in Scripture, Noah's Ark. Both Noah and Moses are delivered from waters of chaos by a floating vessel guided by God's unseen hand. Pharaoh's daughter and the irony of grace. One of the most astonishing ironies in the biblical story occurs here. Pharaoh decrees death, and his own daughter saves the deliverer. She recognizes Moses as a Hebrew baby, possibly by his circumcision, and yet she chooses compassion over compliance. The text says she had pity on him. The Hebrew word here, hamalt, implies deep emotional mercy. This single act of empathy alters the course of history. In a world ruled by violence and fear, this unarmed woman becomes a vessel of divine grace. In an even greater irony, she pays Moses' biological mother to nurse him. The oppressor's palace becomes a nursery for liberation. The very empire that sought to destroy Hebrew life now unknowingly raises the instrument of its own undoing. And now the meaning of his name, she names him Moses, Moshe, saying, I drew him out of the water. But scholars point out that this name has a double resonance. In Egyptian, it likely comes from the root mesu, meaning born of, as themos, born of Thoth. But in Hebrew, mashaha means to draw out. This dual language pun reflects Moses' dual identity. He is Hebrew and Egyptian, outsider and insider. And this tension defines much of his early life. By verse 11, Moses is grown. He sees an Egyptian beating a Hebrew and kills the Egyptian in a fit of justice. But his secret is uncovered. The next day, when he tries to intervene in a fight between two Hebrews, one rebukes him. Who made you ruler and judge over us? This question cuts deep and exposes Moses' lack of authority and identity. He wants to help, but he hasn't yet earned trust. His deliverance is premature, zealous, but not yet called. This is the pivotal point. Moses becomes a fugitive and flees to Midian. The scene at the well is rich in biblical parallels. In Genesis, both Isaac and Jacob meet their wives at wells. Moses' encounter follows the same pattern, but here it also functions as a redemptive moment. He defends vulnerable women from oppressive shepherds and draws water for them. This reversal from killer to protector marks the beginning of his transformation. Reuel, also called Jethro in later chapters, the priest of Midian, welcomes Moses and offers his daughter Zipporah in marriage. Moses becomes part of a new family and names his son Gershom, meaning a stranger there. Even in his new life, Moses feels the weight of exile. His name and his son's name echo the theme of displacement and longing. Now for God's compassion remembered, the chapter closes not with Moses, but with God. The Israelites groaned in their slavery and cried out, and God remembered his covenant. This is not a statement about divine forgetfulness. The Hebrew verb for remember, zakar, means to act in faithfulness to a promise. God is not absent, he is preparing. The entire story hinges on this. God hears, God sees, God remembers, and God is concerned. This marks the turning point of the book. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is about to re-enter the stage of history, not in dreams or private covenants, but in public acts of deliverance. Now some closing reflections. Exodus chapter 2 is more than a biography of Moses. It's a meditation on identity, injustice, and divine preparation. God is quietly working through brave mothers, compassionate daughters, unjust systems, and unlikely places. He shapes Moses in the wilderness. He softens the hearts of the unlikely allies, and he listens, really listens, to the cry of his people. What strikes me most personally in this chapter is that God moves in the hidden spaces. While empires rage and Moses runs, God is already preparing a response. He is never absent. He is never caught off guard. Sometimes deliverance begins in the most fragile places: a baby in a basket, a woman's tear, a prayer whispered through pain. If anything in this chapter stood out to you, or if you noticed something I didn't mention, I'd love to hear your insights in the comments. This journey is one we're taking together, and I am so grateful you're here. Remember, even in silence, God is already writing the next chapter. See you in the next chapter of Exodus.